One of the consistent patterns that I've seen across thousands of coaching calls is that almost all guys, maybe all guys, experience some form of sexual, quote, anxiety or nervousness, or however you want to think about it, on either a regular basis or at least occasionally. Let's talk about a technique that first really took hold in World War II that can significantly help us with this so you can be more calm, more confident, not only in an individual experience, but more and more in a rooted place, a grounded place of calm confidence on a long-term basis. All right, so let's acknowledge that if you're like any of the guys that I've spoken with, or like me, there have been times when you've had some nervousness, some hesitation, maybe even some anxiety around sex. Maybe it's an all the time thing and it's very extreme. It really holds you back, or maybe just pops up occasionally. Let's acknowledge that as a reality. And then let's talk about how we can actually address this so we can improve this situation, both in a short-term basis, something that you can apply tonight or this weekend or whenever it is, something that will also help you over the long term to really transform this so that you can approach sex from a place of calm confidence. Let's rewind back to World War II. There was a practice that first really took hold at this time, at least as far as I can tell. I wasn't part of this, but in doing some research around this, that's really when this idea took hold. The words existed before then, of course, but what I'm talking about is the pre-brief and debrief. We're going to talk about exactly what those are and how to apply it to sex. But the basic idea is that we have a little powwow, either with ourselves or with our team or with your partner, in this case, before a particular activity or project or task or event or whatever it is. And then we have a little powwow after. And when we approach those little powwows with intentionality, it can seriously transform how that particular event or project goes on a very acute and specific basis that day, that time. Also, it is a big key to improving over the long term. So again, these terms existed before, but in doing some research, it was the US military in World War II that really started to regularly use this as a practice. I talked to my nephew, Patrick, shout out to Patrick, by the way. Patrick was in the Navy, and he told me that every day, he was actually an air traffic controller. And as an air traffic controller, every day before every shift, they had a pre-brief. After every shift, they had a debrief. So if this is something that the US military has found valuable since World War II and still uses in almost every job or every job that I know of today, it's something that we can probably benefit from as well. I know that I have significantly benefited from this in my life, and I see it work with clients over and over again. Whether we call it by these specific words or not, the practice itself undeniably works. So let's talk about exactly what I mean, how to apply it to sex so that you can be more confident, have more calm and presence, so you can enjoy the experience, so you can show up and, quote, perform better, which I'm not a big fan of that word, but we'll use it as a best choice for this particular moment. It does matter, right? There are a lot of guys who do think about it in that kind of terminology. How am I going to perform, right? How's my body going to perform? How's this experience going to go? Let's talk about the pre-brief first. The pre-brief you might do well before a particular time together with your partner. You might do it all on your own, or you might even do it with your partner. You also might do it right as you're beginning and getting into that activity. We'll talk about kind of the different ways that that plays out. But in the pre-brief, we want to think about a couple of key things. First of all is awareness around the state of the being of whoever is going to be involved in this, right? So let's approach it for you, and you're just thinking about it from your own standpoint. Part of that pre-brief is having a curiosity and an openness and awareness for how am I feeling right now, right? How am I feeling overall in my life? How am I feeling energetically today? What's been going on today? How are my mind and my emotions feeling? And just checking in and being aware of that. There's no need to try to do anything about it at this stage, or maybe even at all. The first thing is just check in and be aware. If it is something where you're having sex with a partner and you're also in communication about that, you may even have that check-in together and kind of touch base with where each other is feeling today, where you're at. Or you may just use your, hopefully, knowledge of your partner and what is going on in her life and the things that are at play in her mind and her body and her being, and how that might play into your time together. So that's the first thing, is really just check in and be aware. The next thing is to set an intention. It is so powerful when we set an intention in life. It is literally like giving a target to a ship. If we have no target, then who knows where we're going to go? It might go somewhere we want to be, or we might end up somewhere we don't want to be at all. Same thing applies to everything in our life. When we set an intention, more often we're going to find ourselves closer to experiencing what it is that we actually desire. So let's get really clear, though, for a moment, that an intention is not an expectation. And that's actually the next thing to kind of check in with here. So you check in with your overall self. Maybe you check in with your partner and kind of your knowledge of where they're at, what they're feeling. You set an intention, which is, again, not an expectation. An expectation is when you decide ahead of time, okay, this is what's going to happen, and I expect this to happen, and I'm going to be kind of disappointed if this doesn't happen. And of course, the vast majority of the time, you're not really thinking through it that much, but that's what happens when we set expectations. We're deciding ahead of time on an outcome and kind of locking into that. And it really sets us up in kind of this 0- proposition. So if you go into a sexual experience and you have these expectations of exactly how it's going to go, if it doesn't match that, you're going to immediately find yourself in a place of disappointment and frustration. Not going to go well for you, not going to go well for your partner. On the other hand, setting an intention is just giving ourselves a desired path, right? But when we set an intention, here's the difference. So we might set an intention, and it might be vague or it might be very specific, right? So you may set an intention like to be really present, to be calm, to be with whatever the experience is presenting, and to be confident and to kind of engage with some power and some strength and some confidence in that experience. And you set that intention ahead of time. An intention, you also carry with that an openness and a curiosity and a willingness to deal with whatever moment presents itself and to be okay with that, right? So we set the intention, but then as we move into it moment by moment, we're just present and aware and curious of what's happening. Like, I wonder how this is going to go, right? I would love for this to happen, and this is going to be kind of my intention for how I'm going to show up. Now, let's get curious and see actually what presents itself in the moment. Because one of the things with sex, as much as or more than any other aspect of life, is that you never really know the exact state that you're going to be in. You never really know the exact state your partner is going to be in and how it's going to kind of all jive together. Like sometimes everything just clicks and it flows and it's smooth and it's powerful and it's connected. And other times it's like all awkward and one person or both people's energy are kind of off and there's just not really an alignment there. And there's like funkiness and you bump each other weirdly and it's like just weird stuff happens, right? You don't know ahead of time what's going to happen. So the best thing to do is just be curious, be open, and show up to each moment with the intention. One of my favorite intentions to set in life, and certainly in sex as well, is to show up to each moment and just sort of ask, what is this moment asking of me? What is this moment presenting? And then just be your best self in whatever answer you get, right? Let's talk about the debrief. This is very, very important as well. So you have sex, maybe it's immediately after that, maybe it's the next day, it's in the aftermath of that. You want to think back. You want to think back to, first of all, what was your intention? What was the intention or intentions that you set going into that? And did you kind of follow through on that? Or how well did you follow through on that? Now, one thing to touch base on really quickly on the debrief is this is not about judgment. There is no judgment here. This is not about going back and saying and feeling bad, like, oh man, I didn't do this. I set this intention. I didn't do that. And like beating yourself up. It's not that at all. What it is it's just awareness. It's taking a little bit of time to think back to how it went, so that you actually have awareness. Because when you don't do that intentionally, a lot of times it's like the last thing that'll kind of stick with you, or it's one little aspect that'll stick with you, or you move on to some other aspect of life and you don't really kind of pay attention to how it went very specifically at all. You just kind of have whatever the aftermath is, emotionally, physically, whatever, for good or for bad. And there's not really a lot of conscious thought around that. The debrief is about having conscious thought. It's taking a little bit of time, again, either within yourself, which I would recommend 100% of the time, 100% of the time, or when you can, and when you can, have these kind of debriefs with your partner. It can really bring you closer together. It can make your relationship stronger. It certainly will improve and deepen and strengthen the sex and the sexual connection that you have with your partner over time. So you take a little bit of time after that to think back to, okay, what was my intention? How did I kind of follow through on that? You think about what worked, what didn't, what kind of kept you on track with flow and kept you really connected with your partner and kept your body kind of working how you want it to work, what didn't, right? Where, let's say things were kind of going real well and then it shifted and all of a sudden they weren't going very well. Well, what changed? Taking a little bit of time after that to kind of think about, oh, well, that was the moment that I got really caught up in my head. And so I wasn't really present in the moment anymore. And that's what happened. Now, one thing I would definitely recommend as part of this debrief is check in with some gratitude for anything and everything that went well. If you have the opportunity to be intimate with someone that you care about, there's something to be grateful for there. There's probably a lot of things to be grateful for. So checking in with overall gratitude for your relationship, for your partner, gratitude for any of the specific kind of things or moments or things that were said or things that you felt. Gratitude, here's the awesome thing about gratitude. The things that we feel gratitude for, we attract more of, right? So taking a little bit of time during this debrief to check in with the things from that experience that you're grateful for, what will that do? That will help attract more of those things, and you'll experience more of those things in the future when you're having sex. So in the debrief, we've thought about what worked, what kind of didn't work. We've thought about how well we aligned with our intention. We've checked in with some gratitude. The last thing really is just to take some overall lessons and takeaways that you want to apply to the next time. So let's say that, again, things were going really well, and then you found yourself, you got real caught up in your head. Maybe you were thinking about sex specifically, and like you got real nervous and you got stuck in this mental loop of focusing on your erection or focusing on something like that. And the more you got stuck in that loop, the more it took you out of presence, and everything kind of went haywire from there, right? So one of the lessons to learn is to develop a practice, if you don't already have one, to deal with that when it happens, right? So meditation and body check-ins and various things that you can practice so that in that moment, when you recognize, oh, I'm kind of starting to get caught up in my head, you can apply a technique that will bring you back to a place of groundedness, that will bring you back to the present moment, back to your body. So whether it's that or any of the countless other little layers or lessons that might come up, that's the last part of the debrief, is take a moment to decide, okay, this is kind of the takeaway in terms of action items going into next time. This is so unbelievably powerful in what it will do over time when you apply this. There is a reason why it is a fundamental practice in the military and maybe by other forms in all kinds of businesses and ventures and things around the world. This basic idea of a pre-activity kind of check-in, powwow, pre-brief, and a post-activity check-in or debrief. You apply this to sex and your sexual anxiety will fade away. It may not 100% go away for the rest of your life, but I can promise you something that I've experienced and something that I've seen so many clients and friends experience is that when you apply this along with some of the other strategies that I talk about in terms of really optimizing and healing and lifting up your own sexuality, when you apply this pre-brief and debrief though on a regular basis, sex will start to go better. You're going to have more confidence. You're going to be more connected with your partner. You're not going to feel that like, oh, pit feeling in that pit in your stomach of anxiety. I know that a lot of you guys have a pretty good idea of what that feels like. The pre-brief and the debrief can help. It only helps though if you actually put it into practice. It's stacking another little brick in the castle of your life, in the castle of empowered, sacred sexuality. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. If you've been putting it into practice, if you try it and put it into practice, how it goes, leave a comment below. As always, thanks for being part of the tribe. Thanks for sharing part of your day with me. We'll talk to you soon.